Obviously, you're here tonight to talk about the people's the people's vote, and you're a big advocate for that. Why do you think that should take place?
Well, we're heading for a serious political crisis with Brexit, because it looks as if we're going to get either no deal or a very bad deal, and the British people are rightly concerned about that because jobs and people's incomes are going to be at stake. And there's now a groundswell of opinion that the people themselves should have a say on whether they like the terms of Theresa May's deal with Brussels, or whether, having looked at it, they want to stay in the EU. And my argument is that 2 years ago they couldn't know what the deal was because there was no deal. 2 years ago we had a wish list. Remember Boris Johnson and his 350 million quid a week for the NHS on the side of the bus? Well, that's now shown to be a lie because the government's already agreed to a £50 billion exit deal with the EU, and a lot of other claims have been shown to be untrue. And we can actually test the claims against the reality because the government's actually going to have to present to Parliament its deal. And I don't think that politicians in Westminster should decide something as important for every man, woman and child in this country as whether we do or don't stay in Europe for the next generation. I think that decision should rest with the people when they have a chance actually to read what's on offer. And this will be the first time they've had a chance because it'll be the first time we've actually seen the deal. It's like buying a house. You may think that the house is wonderful because a friend of yours told you that it's in a great location and it's got a fantastic view and a new kitchen. But that's why we have surveys. When somebody conducts a survey, and if they tell you in fact there's dry rot and you've got the neighbours from hell, you might have a second thoughts about buying it. And that's roughly what we're doing as a country at the moment. We're conducting the survey on Brexit. We will see the full particulars of Brexit when Theresa May presents her treaty to Parliament in about 2 months' time. And I think the right democratic course for the country then is for us to have a people's vote on whether we like it or whether we prefer to stick with what we know and protect our jobs and not put our future in jeopardy and stay in the EU.
Do you feel that, I've just had a chat with Andrew now, that a people's vote, you know, the average man on the street doesn't really know about the ins and outs of this so-called checkers deal? Do you think it would be too complicated of a thing to put to the public to ask them about, do you agree with the Irish border, etc., or do you agree with certain tariffs? Is that too much of a complicated thing to ask?
Well, people are perfectly well aware, were able to make a judgment on the broad principles, and the broad principles are we or are we not going to stay in a customs partnership and a trade partnership with Europe? That's the big issue. And it's now clear that all forms of Brexit which are on offer involve us leaving our existing customs and trade partnership. That wasn't clear to the British people 2 years ago. They thought it was about what was called sovereignty, but of course the point about sovereignty is it's there to be used. The only person who is genuinely sovereign and in complete control of what goes on around them is the isolated person on a desert island. Everyone else has to deal with their neighbours and make the best of it, and that's true of us as a country as well. There's no point being sovereign if, as a result of that, we trash our trade with 27 other countries which account for nearly half of our trade because they're our neighbours. Our biggest trading partners are our neighbours. They're Ireland, they're France, they're Germany, they're the Netherlands. And I think most reasonable people, when they think about it, realise that it's a good thing to have trade treaties with them so that we don't charge tariffs and have customs checks on goods going to and fro. And that isn't limiting our sovereignty, that is using our sovereignty to enlarge our wealth and our jobs. Now that is the issue which will be absolutely at the centre of this people's vote, is are we going to protect our existing trade agreements on which so many jobs depend, not least here in Shrewsbury and Shropshire, and going west into Wales, an area which has benefited hugely also from European investment over the last 30 to 40 years, and people are very concerned about losing that too.
Do you feel we'll ever leave the EU, or do you feel it's just going to be a never-ending sort of cycle of back and to and fro?
The crucial thing is we cannot leave Europe because we're in Europe. I mean, geographically, the reason why this is also urgent and difficult is that Britain is a European country by virtue of its geography. You know, there's only a small
process which you
stretch
pay
of
hundreds
sea
of pounds. You
that
conduct a
separates us
survey,
from
and the
France,
survey
and another small stretch of sea that separates us from Ireland. The rule of trade and economics is that you always trade most with your neighbours. And that's true within a country as well as between countries. I mean, Shrewsbury trades most with, you know, the West Midlands and with Wales. Why? Because that's where it's located. And it's similarly true that Britain trades most with Ireland to the west and France, the Netherlands and Germany to the east, because they're our neighbours. So
what they say to me
a great
is
sense
if
of
they
English
were
pragmatism.
capable of reading this long, quite technical documents in
I think now needs to have precedence over a very sterile and I think to some extent ridiculous debate about pulling up the drawbridge, pretending that Europe doesn't exist, and that we can somehow be purer and more sovereign by not having anything to do with our neighbours to the west in Ireland and to the east in France and Germany, upon whom actually our economy and livelihood depend. I'm also very, very struck that young people are overwhelmingly in favour of staying in the EU, because they're desperately concerned that their future prospects to live, work and travel across Europe are going to be jeopardised by leaving the European Union and introducing a new regime of visas and border controls and work permits that are going to stop them being able to lead their lives as they would wish. And of course, they are the future generation. And another reason for a people's vote is that things have moved on a lot in the last 2 years, and there wasn't a very high turnout of young people in the referendum 2 years ago because most people didn't realise how serious the issues were. My own view is that if there's a people's vote next year, the voting turnout amongst young people, by which I mean, because I'm in my mid-50s, so young by my standards is people like you and... So is it Alex? Alex. Now Alex is how old are you, Alex?
17.
Well, Alex didn't even have a vote last time, so he really wants a vote, and all his friends, they want votes too, because their future.
You get all of the kitchen has been tarted up,
older still,
flowers,
and I think the turnout, the voter turnout,
get all of that.
people under the age of 30 is going to rocket in a people's vote next year. I think it'll be higher than it's ever been in the recent history of this country, because young people now grasp the fact that their futures are at stake. And they want to say, and they're right to want to say, because they're the ones who are going to have to live with the consequences of us pulling out of Europe and bringing back old-style borders, you know, with customs checks, tariffs, visas, and all of that, which could really damage their prospects of developing careers over the next generation.
Do you feel that it went to, I've heard some people saying if it did go to a people's vote, does that sort of undermine the democracy of an actual idea of a referendum? The fact that if you don't get...
No, it was David Davis who said that democracy without the right to change
the nationalists and unionists.
But actually, I don't even think changing climate change for 2 years ago. People didn't get a chance to give a view on the terms of Brexit because there were no terms. There was no treaty. There couldn't be a treaty because until the referendum, nobody seriously thought we were going to leave the European Union. So the question this time is very different. The question this time is, having seen the terms of Brexit, which Theresa May is negotiating, do you think they're better than what we've got at the moment? So it's not the wish list of 350 million for the NHS and all the claims as to what might be better if we left. It's the actual fine print of what we're actually agreeing to. And I think it's absolutely right that people should have their say on that. And importantly, so do people themselves. Opinion polls show overwhelming support for people's votes, and I think that's very important. Because,
the rights of EU citizens who are EU residents in this country, are there EU residents who are here this evening? Well, there are some here.
Our whole future in Europe, people by 2 to 1 say that they want to have their own say in it, and given the gravity of the issues at stake, I think they're absolutely right.
Just on a wider point, I think it was today or yesterday, it was a Labour MP up north, I think it was Crewe, that called for a general strike to force it.
I want a general people's vote, not a general strike.
But what would your... I know a few Labour MPs have come out and sort of hit back and said that's not what we want.
Yeah, absolutely not. We're not going on strike about this. After all, this whole debate about Europe is about creating more jobs and better jobs, and and more successful businesses, and strikes would undermine that. So I'm not in the business of advocating strikes at all. On the contrary, it's the hard-working people of Britain who want to be able to work harder and actually, sell their goods into European markets. They're the people who are creating this this big momentum towards a people's vote. Old style, left-wing calls for general strikes, I don't think have any place in the case for a people's vote.
Yeah. And just finally, obviously it's the Labour Party conference as well this week, and
I've just come from there. I literally got driven down from Liverpool.
Oh, I see.
Copy of that agreement was sent to every voter in Northern Ireland before the referendum. This referendum in Northern
we did have a campaign in the Shropshire Star.
Oh, good. Well, I'll happily join your campaign.
Yeah,
you could say having
that
driven down. It's great while it's a dual carriageway, and the Tyne Bridge is fantastic. So the Tyne Tunnel is fantastic. Getting out of Liverpool is very fast, but it gets slower and slower the closer you get to Shrewsbury.
But it's just as well you're not coming from Birmingham, because all the trains from Birmingham are up the spout.
Aren't they? Yes. Well, I know the signals that went down.
So if the case that our campaign is still going, if there was a push for a dual day 5,
I'm strongly in favour, because I'm a former transport secretary, so I'm strongly in favour of better transport. Indeed, I want to bring back the through trains, which used to go to Aberystwyth through Shrewsbury. If I was in editing your paper, I'd be campaigning for them to come back again. You need much better rail services. Though I do admire your semaphore signals, because being a bit of a transport geek. Yeah. I spent 10-15 minutes hunting around the station, which is a beautiful station. It's got that very old Victorian signal box. Yeah. It's got that collection of semaphore signals. Can I show you? You might publish my photo.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you've got a good one there.
Oh yeah, and the signal box is terrific too.
Which I've tweeted out. But you need the trains to be faster and more frequent. It's not, the service isn't really good enough from Shrewsbury. And I did try to improve it. I was very keen on bringing back the through trains to Aberystwyth, but unfortunately it didn't happen. Let me show you my photo.
Is it not devolved to the Senate now as well?
Well, no, not the cross-border services. No, there you are. What do you think of that? Do you think that's up to?
Fantastic. Quite possibly, yeah. Quite possibly.
Can we send it to you?
Yeah, if you want to, yeah. If you want to put that
on the video.
Let me. Would you be
seen
if you want
there?
to print it, you can print it. Say I took the photo.
Yeah, we will do. We'll give you a caption.
Is that going to be high resolution enough?
Yeah, it should be if it's sent in large.
Do you want to put your email address in and send it to yourself?
people to see the Prime Minister's treaty and to be able to compare it with staying in the European Union, how many think that would be a good thing for us to do as a country? How many think it would be a bad thing for us to do as a country? Well, I respect, we're a great democracy, we respect all views, but the overwhelming view here this evening is that we should have that people's vote so we can express views on both sides. I think one of the big problems in politics and in what's happened in this country in the last 20 or 30 years is that young people haven't been engaged enough. In particular, they haven't been turning out to vote enough. And they're being mobilised by this issue because, as one of them put it to me at a meeting recently, I do not want to be shut up on a small island with Jacob Rees-Mogg, Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage. And I have every sympathy with that view. And they want to have their say. They've got a right to have their say. Their future is more at stake than anyone else's. I'm now 55, so I'm positively ancient. Actually, I'm extremely young for a member of the House of Lords. I'm about 30 years below the average age there.